Hello, welcome to Maximize Your Time and Elevate Your Life, the weekly podcast that gives busy professionals practical tips to work smarter, not harder. I'm your host, Blinn Bates, and each week we're going to explore simple strategies to help you take control of your calendar and create more margin in your life. Because although time is finite, how you use it matters. Welcome back. Everyone loves to talk about motivation, but most people don't talk about discipline and resilience, which are the two things you need when motivation disappears. Today, I want to talk about why discipline and resilience matter in business, in leadership, and in life, but especially when things get hard. So motivation can get you started. We're motivated to get going, but discipline keeps you going, and resilience can keep you moving after you've hit some setbacks. When I talk about discipline, I talk about doing what needs to be done even when we don't feel like it. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm a little bit tired, a little groggy, I don't really want to go to the gym. I do it anyway because that's what I do. I'm following a system, and the system is, here's what I do on a daily basis instead of here's what I do when I feel like it. So we're choosing to be consistent over having our decisions be made by emotions. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to recover or adapt and continue after a difficulty. So we're not going to necessarily avoid setbacks, but we're going to move through them. So for instance, maybe I'm going to the gym consistently, I'm pretty disciplined about that, and I suffer an injury. Well, resilience is going to be me sticking to it to the extent that I can to recover, to adapt, and to move forward. The discipline is going to create the momentum, but resilience is going to sustain it because there are going to be setbacks along the way. Why does this matter in business? Well, business, as many of you know, is not a straight line. When we go from A to B, not necessarily going to be the easiest path to get there. Sometimes there's going to be setbacks. Sometimes we're going to have things like difficult clients or challenges with our team members or economic uncertainty. We've maybe made some mistakes, or we've implemented some things that didn't work and they've caused us some unexpected setbacks. The difference between people that have long-term success and people that stagnate is often not intelligence-based. In my experience, it's people that are consistent. They have a quick recovery time. They recover quickly. They are resilient, and they have the ability to continue on even in the face of that adversity. This is all about just staying in the game. So, the old saying, if you fall down, get back up. It's the people that get back up that are the ones that are ultimately successful in the long term. So we've talked a lot about systems, and I think that systems can help in this. So when we're planning our day or we're planning our week and we're ready for that day before we're opening our email and letting our email set our priorities, we're following that week that we've set out. So here's our perfect week. Here's the things that we prioritize. Maybe taking care of ourselves is one of those things. So we're going to exercise even when we're at our busiest. That's one of our non-negotiables. We're protecting our boundaries. So if we've said that we're going to work until 6 o'clock at night, at 6 o'clock at night, we're going to go home. We're going to eat dinner with our family. We're going to say no to things that don't serve us. We're going to batch-like work together, stick to our priorities, even when it's difficult. One of mine is been on a little bit of a health journey, and food is always one for me. Skipping that sugar after dinner, it can be tough. It's not easy. It's probably one of my favorite things, but discipline isn't necessarily glamorous. It's just repetitive. Doing the same thing over and over and over is typically what gets results. And that high performance is usually built on boring consistency. So what do we do when we have a plan and that plan breaks down? We encounter one of those storms. We've talked about that before, and those buffalo in those storms run through it. They face it head on and they run through it because it shortens the exposure of the storm. And that's how resilient people face problems. They face them head on, whether that's having the hard conversation with the employee, adjusting after you've made mistakes, admitting those mistakes, recovering after a loss, adapting. You're doing these things to continue to move forward rather than quitting. This resilience doesn't mean that you're unaffected by these things. You're still affected by them, but you're continuing in the face of them. And these two things are interrelated, I think. I think discipline is what builds resilience, because when we're keeping promises to others, when we're keeping promises to ourselves, it creates confidence. It creates confidence from other people in us, and it creates confidence in ourselves. Whether other people know it or not, the person that's staring at us in the mirror always knows. And consistency and discipline is what creates stability. And these small disciplined actions prepare us for bigger challenges. It's kind of like the miracle of compounding. When we're doing these little things, they add up to big things over time. So we're building this resilience before we actually need it. It's just like exercise in my mind. We're training for when the crisis arises. We are choosing our difficult rather than not being able to function later in my life. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do those harder workouts. I'm going to get some mobility, flexibility, and strength so that later in life, my body still works the way that I want it to, rather than sitting in a chair in the nursing home. This can be really practical. So how do we do this? We want to start small. We want to create some routines around the things that we know that we need to do and use these routines or systems instead of our willpower. So here's the system that I've created to plan my week. And then once I've planned my week, that's what I'm going to stick to. I'm going to be disciplined to what I have instituted. Not militantly. There's going to be things that come up, but if I'm getting 80%, I think that's really good. And then we're going to build this resilience maybe by reframing some of these setbacks that we have. So we want to solve problems quickly. We don't want to dwell on them. But we're going to also develop recovery practices like exercise, sleep, meditation, reflection, journaling, whatever that may be. And when challenges do appear, we can look at it from a different lens of, what am I learning through this, instead of, why am I the victim of this? So this week, I want you to identify one small area in your life that requires some more discipline. We all know what that is. And once you've identified that, take that uncomfortable action, whatever that might be, as small as that might be. Those small acts are going to compound to solve bigger issues. This discipline isn't punishment. Resilience is not toughness. They're both forms of self-leadership. So this is how we lead ourselves. And over time, they separate us who endure from those who are just drifting. They have no plan. They just kind of go with their emotions, and they end up wherever they end up. If you don't have a map, you don't ever know where you're supposed to end up. So when we build this discipline, we strengthen our resilience. That's how we're going to maximize our time and elevate our life. Thanks for listening to Maximize Your Time, Elevate Your Life. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little more time freedom. If you're ready to maximize your time, please navigate to our consulting page on my website, which is blendbates.com, and submit the right fit evaluator to see if I can help you elevate your life. Remember, time is limited, but your potential isn't. I'll see you next week.